touch it. Well, guys, welcome to the Benefits of Game modding panel here that is hosted by Keen Software Studios. My name is Matt. Software House, sorry. Keen Software House. My name is Matt Finch. You may know me online as D4 Catering. Who are we kidding? None of you guys know who I am. I'm a Twitch streamer, filmmaker. I do paintball videos. I do drone footage. And I do a lot of gaming. That's what I do for fun. So you guys can check me out on D4 Cater. We do a lot of collaborations with a couple of our partners over at Pants Pending Studios. They do their live podcast network out of Spokane, Washington, a bunch of stand-up comedians. So that's pretty much what we do. We do comedy, gaming, that's the gist. That's enough about me, because we're not here for me. We're here for these guys. So these guys are the head mod developers over at Keen Software House. So I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. So let's go from right to left.
Okay. My name is Brent Martin, known as Rexar online. I was a programmer at Keen Software House for a few years. I left this January for various reasons. But one of the main things I did at Keen was work on the modding integration in our codebase. Did some documentation for the modders, and I was the community manager for the modding community. I helped a lot of people learn how to mod, implemented new features as they were requested, and all kinds of fun stuff. And I also do my own mods in the very, very precious free time that I have. Phoenix?
My name is Daniel Osborne. I'm known as Phoenix or Phoenix84 online. I've been a software developer for 10 years doing non-gaming related work. I'm a modder, and I have made mods like the Stargate mod for Space Engineers. I've been one of the contributors for that. I've also been one of the contributors for the Bean Bro mod. And I don't work for Keen, never did. But I've worked with Rexar a lot.
My name is Michael Boyson. My online alias is Shaostoul. I'm mostly doing 3D animation, 3D modeling, stuff like that. I help a lot of people figuring out getting into the modding process and coming up with an idea and then actually seeing it get into the game. I do YouTube videos. I'm trying to find out how to get enough bandwidth to stream Twitch. And it's been a long process. I've started modding since I was very young. I was modding on an Amiga 500 playing Elite Frontier and Battletech Crescent Hawk's Inception. Wow. And then it's gotten further. I was doing Warcraft and then Freelancer, and now it's Fallout 4 and Space Engineers. And I collabed with both these guys making models for them.
Sweet, guys. Well, we're talking about modding. So mainly the benefits to the gaming industry. So mods as a whole, for you guys at least, from a modder's perspective, how do you guys think a mod enhances a current game's shelf life?
In every aspect. You can see all kinds of extra content being added to a game. If you're playing Fallout 4 or any Bethesda game, you can see a whole storyline or expansion get added. With Space Engineers, we have a lot more PvE added to it, so you're able to fight more spaceships and ground encounters and stuff like that, and more stuff to build with, so you're not limited to the small amount of stuff that's presently available. I have a mod that adds over 800 new blocks to it, which is on par with what the game already has. And yeah, I think it just makes it a lot more accessible, a lot more fun, keeps it interesting so people want to keep going back to it.
I think one of the things it does is it brings a lot more people in to the game, and it keeps them interacting with each other and with the game and with the developers a lot longer, which kind of gives the game a lot more life than if it was just a play, you're done, whatever. And sometimes some games you'll play for a while and then the player count will dwindle and then the game kind of dies. Modding is one of those things that allows you to always have new content to bring more people in and keep them playing. It's one of the things that I think has kept Minecraft, for example, around for a really long time. There are hundreds of mods, thousands probably of mods for Minecraft, and that game is over 10 years old now, and it's still very popular.
And it's still getting modded.
And it's still getting modded.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for Space Engineers, because it's still in early access. There's not a lot of content in the game yet, and until recently, all the models were placeholders. So there was a lot of opportunity for modders to add new features into the game, add new content, new things to do, things to see, and it really kept up the player count high while we were in this phase where there wasn't much to do in the game.
Yeah, there were points where it was really hard to stay entertained with it.
Right.
And modding was the way that just kept it going. And there was probably about 6 months there where I was like, I'm not sure if this game's going to survive. Right. And then they started releasing more stuff, and I was like, okay, thank God.
Yeah, a lot of people have always been, very frequently they're like, where's more content? We want more content. There's no endgame content, And mods provide a way of giving players that content that they need. At least until developers add it, or even beyond what the developers add, and players want more than what the developers have added. It's like, well, I want to be able to do this, and the developers they don't want that in their game. It's like, that doesn't really fit with the style of our game, but modders are like, well, you want it, here you go, you have it, you can play it how you want to play the game. And I think that's one of the things with Space Engineers, it's a sandbox game, which means you can play it how you want to play it. There's no real set rules and guidelines for how you should play the game. And mods like to increase, add more rules and how you want to play the game.
Yeah, there's a few mods that are actually out right now that the devs don't want to add. Like there's the shields. They don't want to add shields because the game's supposed to be taking place in 2077 or something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, we don't want shields because it's not going to be out by then. And then other people are like, I'm going to add it anyways because I want it.
Because I need them, because I don't want to die.
And then there's all these PvE mods coming out that are adding content to planets. Planets right now in the vanilla game are very dull, but they're working on adding stuff to it. And it's just taking too long, so people are like, hey, we're going to add it.
Yeah.
And then there's the campaigns. A lot of people have been adding campaigns. The biggest one is Escape from Mars. That's the most popular one, and that's been around for a while. And I think if it wasn't for that game, last year was really hard for me. And I came back after I got well enough, and I played the Escape from Mars. And I was like, this game is good. I see the potential, and I want to stay with it. But it's just waiting. Waiting's the hardest part.
There are a lot of games that I've bought in years after they've been released because of a mod. My buddy started a server, or so on and so forth. So yeah, it increases the longevity of games, guys. It really does. So as far as Keen goes specifically, how is Keen embracing the community as far as modding? Like if somebody out here, how many people in here are interested in getting into modding or are already currently modding? Okay,
cool.
So for those people, basically, what advice would you give them if they were just starting to get into modding? Like what community should they go to? What would you guys recommend?
Get on the Discord server.
Yes, the Keen Discord server is the place for modders in Space Engineers anyway.
Well, yeah, well, this is for space. If you're wanting to mod Space Engineers or medieval engineers, getting onto the Keen Discord is good. For any other game, you want to find their community server. If they have Discord, if they've got forums or other communication methods, find them, talk to them. I'm sure they're going to be just like Keen, where they have tons of active modders on there available for help. You can ask them questions. They'll, like I've helped a lot of people on the Discord server. They have questions. I'm like, here's how you do it. Here's a code sample. Or even if if there's a modder not available, I happen to know. Oh, you got to do this in the model. You can do this.
Right.
There's going to be people there to help you. You can ask questions. They'll link you up with resources like the guides, tutorials, videos, even videos he's made. There's other videos out there. And that's the very first step.
The biggest thing is trying to establish communication.
Right.
Finding people that are like-minded. If you know only one small aspect, like if you just know 3D modeling, and even if you don't know how to unwrap the model so you can texture it, and you don't know texturing, you at least know 3D modeling. You can more than likely find somebody that'll help you through the process. If you're getting into programming, there's already tons of tutorials online, but putting it in application is a little bit more different, and that's where getting on the Discord server makes things better, because then you can ask somebody, hey, I made this, it's kind of working, but I'm not sure what's going on wrong. And then you ask somebody, and they're like, hey, this is what you messed up. And it could be as simple as mixing up a period.
Right. Yeah, I work with a couple of other modders in the community. Like, Shaostoul makes models for me because I have no artistic ability at all. And I also work with a modder called Dr. Ganipus who makes really amazing planets for the game. And what I do is I write scripts for his planets that add various effects, like there's a lava texture on the ground, and when you walk on it, it sets you on fire. So collaborating with other people like that is a good way to increase your skill set and make up for skills that you don't have.
And to put out even better content.
Right. Yeah.
Like just planets by themselves, you know, they look great. But if you don't, you know, one of the extra things that Rexar Scripts adds is they add environmental effects.
Right.
Like you can have an acid atmosphere that eats through your ship.
Yeah.
And you know, a modeler or a texturer is not going to know how to do that necessarily. And you know, you work together and you can produce even better content.
If you're looking at getting into modding and you're okay with getting into a game that you're not super interested in, Space Engineers is a very good first step because it's very accessible.
Right.
The community is friendly, and you have somebody there that knows, at least somebody that knows there for everything. So if you're wanting to get into programming or you're wanting to get into 3D modeling, somebody there knows it. And if you want to go to school for it, then you could talk to some people that actually went to school for it and figure out a better school. Like a lot of people are wanting to go to school for 3D animation, and I'm like, try looking at some of the places where you don't get a degree, but you get a certificate. Like there's a Dave School down in Orlando that has a 9-month program for 3D animation that you can get a job in making movies. And that's a lot better than going somewhere for like a 4-year degree, spending $100,000 and then not getting exactly what you want and not getting a job out of it. So modding is a very good way to get your foot in the door to figure out what you like and then figure out where you want to go from there. Because you might be like, I really like programming, and then you find out, I don't like programming. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to try out 3D modeling, and then you're trying to get a hang of it, and then you're like, okay, this is really fun. And then you're like, okay, where can I go to learn more about this? And while you can learn stuff online, and a degree sort of helps, the biggest thing when it comes to something art-related, whether it's programming or 3D animation or textures, it's portfolio. So getting into modding, doing what we do, will really help you figure out and have something to show, hey, I've done all this, it's in a working environment, what about getting a job here?
Yeah, I mean, even like you were saying, you don't even have to work in a game industry in order to have the experience of modding be useful. If you wanted to make 3D movies, you know, animated movies like Pixar, you can learn the 3D modeling and the texturing and animations, and that's applicable to there too. A little different, but you still learn that you have the basics. And you know, even with the programming, for example, you know, once you learn how to program, that's applicable anywhere.
Yeah, you can get a job making apps for phones, or
Right.
you can get into game working and making mods there, or actually working for a game company. Like I saw a guy that was working on, I think it was Skyrim. He ended up making like a whole expansion, and Bethesda was like, hey, you want a job? And he got a job because he made something, and he had that portfolio already there.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got hired at Keen. I started working on mods, and the company liked what I was doing so much that they just sent me messages like, hey, you want to work here? I'm like, okay.
Didn't apply, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
There's a few other developers that have done that too, Leon, sir.
Right, yeah.
As well, who wrote the Exploration Enhancement mod, EEM.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And then
yeah.
Zockley was actually a streamer before he started working at Keen, and then he got hired there to be their media phase PR person.
Right.
Yeah, he made YouTube videos and, you know, did...
That's a really good transition as a
Yeah.
Twitch streamer myself, using a creative stream. You just go into creative, and if you're doing modding and programming, not that I'm a modder or anything like that, but I see a lot of streams that are like that, where they're creative streams, and you can just do all your programming, and people are interested, and that builds a community right there on your channel. So
Yeah, I'm not even able to stream yet
Yeah.
because of bandwidth, and I have people asking me all the time, when are you going to stream? When are you going to stream? I want to watch you do this.
the fact that he's uploading these mods in the middle of the woods is very fascinating.
I've heard the stories of what he's had to go through to upload mods.
Yeah, when you're talking on Discord and you hear like an owl hoot in the background, like, how do you get your mods out? He's like, it takes a while, man. I gotta upload it.
Just a second, I have to go deal with the UFO.
Yeah.
Hanging from a string on a tree.
Especially since you work on models and textures, and those are quite large compared to
Yeah, this is
mods.
fascinating. He'd be like programming this, then all of a sudden he'd have to upload it. It's much like being a YouTuber, where you like upload this huge video, like, well, there's 9 hours out of my life. I'm gonna go make a couple of sandwiches.
Yeah. And the worst part is I have to stop. Like, I click the upload button, and I'm like, okay, go do whatever I gotta do. Wait for this to finish.
Yeah, as your voice chat's cutting out, you're like, I'm uploading.
I've heard that too. Like, I was talking to him yesterday, like, a little bit. Yeah. So as far as the, modding for Keen itself, you guys have really embraced the community, right? As in Keen Software House, right? How important is that to the company, and also how important is that to the modding community? What is the focus going forward for Keen to help the community? What tools do they have?
Keen has always been really focused on modding because, it's this thing where the mods increase the lifespan of the game, they increase playership, they just make everything better and create all this more interest. So we spend a lot of our time actually looking at what modders are using, what they need. I've got a bunch of threads on our forum where people just go and request new features to be added to the modding API and report other things that are broken. So that was basically my entire job.
Was fixing all of that?
Fixing all of that, yeah.
Fixing Rexar.
Fixing
That's not a small job.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's modding is really important to Keen. And going forward, they're gonna, obviously I'm not working there anymore, but they're gonna continue to improve the modding API. We also have an SVN group where certain modders from our community actually have direct source access to the game, and they can submit changes and improvements to the game. And that's how we've got a lot of the new features in our mod API that we have, is just directly from the modding community. So it's more than just increasing the player count. It's like these modders are contributing directly to the game, to the company.
Yeah, there's actually models that are in the game because of modders.
Right.
There's a few of them, and then they are adding stuff from the modding community, and why not? It's free development. They didn't have to pay somebody to make it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've submitted source changes to their code base, which they've accepted, and I've been using them in my mods.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, it in particular is one of the games that I've noticed is very open to its community.
Yeah, it's very.
And you guys have been accessible to me even just from meeting me for the first time, and they're super welcoming. Although I'm the speaker for the panel, obviously, but, so they have to be nice to me. But
They don't have to be.
no, not really. They don't have to be. This could be a roast, I guess. But no, they were very, very welcoming. But me personally, from my experience, my landlord actually owns a server on Space Engineers. So he wanted to get into it, got a server, Spokane Survival Society. I told him I'd give him a plug. And I did play on a server for a long time. But he mentioned the fact that you especially were very welcoming. The moment he popped in, not just because he was a server owner, I don't think he even knew he was one when he came in. And then you were just absolutely welcome, like, how can I help? Yeah. And helped him out because he was having some issues with on his server, and he finally got him working. But that's one thing that I've noticed as far as Keen specifically, is that they're very welcoming to server owners or just people who want to play. Like, hey, I want to add something to the game. I want to be a modder. So that's something that's very awesome on your guys' part.
Yeah,
so.
It's definitely very unique in that aspect. I've modded a lot of other games, and it's not always so open.
Right.
You can get into a game and the community is just toxic. They'll attack you personally, they'll try to make it so you don't want to do it, and some of those games you just kind of want to avoid.
I have a couple in the back of my head that I'm thinking of.
Minecraft is pretty hard to want to get into modding for, because some of the people I've met are just really mean, and it's because people develop elitist attitudes. And they're like, oh, I'm already doing it, I don't need to help anybody.
The modding community in Space Engineers is really open and welcoming and very helpful. If anybody has a problem, they just like, hey, how do I do this? And then you get 3 or 4 people say, yeah, here's a code sample.
A lot of the community in there is very focused on making sure everybody's getting helped, and everybody's able to figure out what they need to. Sometimes they'll come to me with a unique problem that I've never experienced before. And I'm like, I have no idea what you did.
But you did it.
You broke it.
You broke it.
Broke
Good
it
job.
very thoroughly. Let's try to figure out how to fix this.
Well, I think part of the welcoming aspect is especially on the Keen Discord, there are roles for various people that are on there. And particularly the modders are blue, and what that means is they have a well-established mod. They have well-established mods that are popular. But not only that, one of the requirements is that you're open and able and willing to help others with questions and stuff.
Right.
So if somebody's got a blue name on their Discord, you can ask them for help.
Yeah, we reward those modders that are trustworthy and help others by giving them this special designation on the Discord.
Yeah, they don't just get the blue name for having released something. They get the blue name for being helpful and producing good stuff and all around being
constructive in the community, basically.
Yeah.
I've noticed that there's a lot. Yeah, whenever I've talked to anybody on that community specifically that has a blue flag on there, very helpful and very insightful. Especially, they go, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna get you the person that does.
Yeah, certainly. It's like, I see a question on there and I don't know the answer, but I'm like, you know what? If somebody else hasn't responded, I'm like, you know what? You want to talk to this person because they're gonna know.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Well, the other question I had for you, we were kind of talking about it earlier, was about as a career, moving forward as a career as a modder. We talked about getting a certificate instead of getting a 4-year degree. That's probably a better idea, just because it'll get you in the market, get your foot in the door, right? Are there any other things that you could advice you could give to somebody who's like, hey, I kind of want to do this as a career path. I'm comfortable in modding now. What can I do when I'm at that step?
Build a portfolio.
Yeah, it's building a portfolio, building a reputation with the people that you work with. I've been doing space engineers for the last 4 years, and I didn't start getting donations until a year later. And the first 6 months, or the last 6 months of that, is when I started helping people. And when I started helping people is when I started getting donations.
Right.
You can create things and release them, and somebody might donate. But if you're on a small community, Space Engineers is a small community, but it's very supportive of everybody. But if you were to get into a bigger game, it gets a little bit easier to get more donations for it. But it's not easy. It's not, I'm going to release something and then I'm going to get millions of dollars from it. It's, I'm going to release something and then I'm going to maintain it and update it and add to it, and then I'm going to release something else. And it's essentially a full-time job, if not longer, because of the amount of work you have to do to release something good and then maintain that thing. And then you have to read the community. You have to be like, okay, so all these people are complaining about this. The reason I'm making the water mod for Space Engineers is because the community was like, hey, I want this.
Yeah.
You're fulfilling a need that the community has.
So you kind of want to read the community, and all these skills you kind of develop over time. Focus on what it is you want to do. Focus on dealing with the community and getting the help you need and trying to work collaboratively, and then all the other stuff kind of falls in place afterwards.
And then for coding, one of the important things is, publish your code on GitHub or something, so, prospective employers can see your code. One of the things that, particularly coding and Space Engineers can teach you is, how game engines work, how particularly if you already have experience in application development, games are different. They work differently, and you learn how their system works, and you can learn. It's a good way to learn multi-threaded programming. Managing memory, because if you allocate too much memory, you're going to crash the game. I've done that. So you can learn all these skills, and if you have mods that you publish, that shows examples. Here's where I have done some multi-threaded programming. That's something that you can put on add that to your portfolio to show people. Like here.
One of the biggest things is that you're doing it on a working environment. A lot of people are like, I'm going to make my own game. I'm going to learn 3D modeling, I'm going to learn programming, and then you start doing it and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff I have to do. And it's overwhelming. You want to take it one step at a time. Probably dabble a little bit and figure out what you're better at and what you enjoy more. As long as you're having fun, it's okay. And that's what you want to do. But if you really need to do programming, try to find somebody else if that's not what you want to do. Because some aspects of creating stuff for video games is very tedious and is not a lot of fun, but it needs to be done for you to have something workable. And maybe you'll be able to find somebody crazy enough that likes sitting there doing programming because it fits a fancy.
Right.
Yeah, I learned basically everything I know about programming from modding Space Engineers. Actually, when I started modding Space Engineers, I had no programming experience at all.
I remember that.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. I found this project, it was called Space Engineers Server Extender, and it was this huge, ancient, bloated thing that basically just hacked into the game server to make it run better. And it was like falling to pieces, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just fix this one thing. And then, another thing, I can just tweak this. And then 6 months later, Keen's like, hey, your work on Server Extender is great. You wanna come work for us? I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
sure.
I find that quite an impressive story because he went from no programming experience to working as a game developer in 6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's
it really
really
is.
insane.
That's the dedication.
Yeah.
I don't recommend this.
But it does show you.
Anybody else have this experience in 6 months? Turn around? No? Nobody else? Okay.
But it does show you that there are paths available, especially if there are eyes watching what you do.
Right, right.
And you do good work. They'll be like, oh, you know what? That's good. That's a good developer right there.
And that's the good thing about Keen Software House is that they interact with the modding community, and they have a Facebook page where they post things that they found. They're like, hey, I found this really cool mod, you should check it out.
Mm-hmm.
While we post things to the Steam Workshop, it's cool, but to have that developer showing all these things getting made, it's really cool because not only is the developer seeing it and they're like, we might want to hire this person or integrate it into the game, it might show another game developer company that this person has talent. Right? So you could indirectly get a job for modding another video game.
So a lot of it's not like building an entire add-on to a game. A lot of it's like a small tweak to an already existing system that you guys found, right?
It's a very good way to get into it.
That's
how
a
you
very
start.
good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's certainly one way to start. My very first modding experience was back with Star Trek Armada, the old RTS game.
Oh, now we're in my territory.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that game.
I started, and this was back in late 90s, early 2000s, so there was not as much on the internet then. So I was learning all this stuff, figuring it out by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd go in the files and I'd be editing them, adding new ships, I found models online. I'd be importing them into the game, and I was doing all kinds of and at that time that modding was something I just did for me. I never made anything and published it, but that gave me the first experience with it, and that it kind of led me into Space Engineers after that.
So everybody here had like a turnaround game, a game that did it for them, right? You did yours with Space Engineers, start and finish there, right? Yours with Star Trek Armada was your start game. Shaostoul, what was yours?
It's really hard to say. Like I said, I started with Elite Frontier and stuff like that, but that was small stuff. I would say it's probably around Warcraft 3 or Dwarf Fortress is when modding really started picking up for me.
Oh, gotcha.
So I didn't even start with 3D modeling.
Really?
So
Where'd you start?
With a little bit of programming. Like I was figuring out how to add assets to the game, and from there I went to the 3D modeling.
You got into the programming side and you're like, I don't like this as much, but 3D modeling, hey, this is fun.
I was like, this is kind of boring and not a lot of fun.
That's the other nice thing about modding is it's got so many different areas that you can learn. The modeling, the texturing, the programming. You can find something in there that you like to do.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to experience all the different aspects to figure out what it is you really like to do.
Finding a good sound designer is really hard.
Totally forgot about audio.
You can have somebody that's like, I'm going to make audio for you, and then they send you these clips and they're like blown out or really choppy or whatever, and you're like, I don't know about that, but keep trying.
So your creaking vessel when it gets hit by something sounds like a whoopee cushion, and you're like,
Something like that.
well, we might want to keep that in there. It's hilarious, but right?
None of my mods have sounds.
Or
That might be a mod in itself, the whoopee cushion creaking sound in metal.
Or you have your
Yep,
like
got that down.
World War II battleship cannons, and then they sound like pea shooters, and you're like, that's not right. And it really builds to the immersion, and that's what you want to do as a modder, is you want to make it as immersive and fun as possible. but you don't know all the skills.
Tell that to the guy that made the Macho Man mod for the dragons in Skyrim. Because that was hilarious and it was really effective as well. But yes. So as far as, first of all, I'm not going to be asking all the questions here, guys. Do any of you guys have any questions for these guys? Anybody? We got a couple here, right? All right, let's start with you.
So you guys talked a lot about the programming and modeling, but I'm wondering where folks that are looking to do things like, my background is mostly in QA and in, just kind of, so that and audio, where do you kind of go to, I mean, like if I was to go up on Steam and say, hey, I'm good at this kind of stuff, does anybody need a hand? And
I would say for QA, the biggest thing you want to do is get in the community and interact. Because as you start interacting, you'll start finding people that are good at something and not good at other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the collaborative projects I work on, I'll do the 3D modeling and I'll work with a programmer and he's like, hey, we need somebody to do this.
Right.
And I'll find somebody to do that. And it works that way, but it gets a little bit more difficult to keep things all working together when everybody's doing different things. If there was somebody to be like, hey, if you need a project manager, I'm able to do that.
Right.
And you keep everybody in the loop because you could be working on a project and have all kinds of things going on, and then a month down the road you're like, hey, so where's your part?
Right.
And if they don't have the communication, you'd be like, oh, so I did a month's worth of work for nothing?
Right.
Because they bailed or whatever. So that's where having a community manager or somebody that does QA is really important. The other really important about QA is getting people to give you feedback is the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
If something's broken, you most likely might hear about it. But if there's balance issues, you won't hear about it really. If something could be broken and nobody uses that part of it, and that's where QA comes in to play as well, because you'll be able to go, hey, this is broken, you need to fix it.
Well,
And
if you're looking to get into like being a video game tester, one of the things you can do is find bugs in the games that you play and report them, send an email to the developer, say, oh, I found this thing, it happens when you do this, 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 and this. So for Space Engineers, we have this bug reporting system on our Discord server where you just type in some chat commands and then it inserts a bug report directly into our tracker. And that's a great way to report things. And if you consistently make lots of good reports and find good issues that many other people don't find, then your name will start to stick in people's heads. And then when you go to apply for this position, then you can say, hey, yeah, I've reported all of these issues.
For QA particularly, that's actually kind of an important thing because, when I write my mods, multiplayer testing on mods is not easy because you got to coordinate with other people. I don't always have, somebody else I can, reach out to test mods on a server. So, even if you don't know how to do coding or anything like that, having an extra person in the world to help test your mod is valuable. And you could even be like, hey, I'm available if anybody needs to test mods. I'm open to testing. I can report, the bugs. I can, get you repro steps, that kind of stuff. And that's valuable too, because I have a hard time sometimes finding people willing to hop on a server with me when I need them to test.
And then for the audio, getting in the community and asking, because some games have different aspects to it. If you don't know how to do the audio editing, I guarantee there's a tutorial somewhere online. Like I'm doing 3D modeling PBR tutorials. I guarantee you'll find somebody to work in, I think Fruity Loops is free, and there's some other free programs out there that do audio editing. And the biggest thing to do is to just get in there and mess with it and work on figuring out how it works. And then see if you can find people that are like, hey, this doesn't sound very good, I made this sound for you, do you want to use it?
Right. Yeah, if you want to get into producing audio for mods or games or whatever, you can just go into the modding community and be like, hey, does anybody need audio for their mod? I'm a sound engineer, I can make audio for you.
It's one of the hardest things to find.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find people for audio for a while, and I think it's a steep learning curve for a lot of people because they don't realize all the little aspects to audio editing.
Right.
that you have to take into consideration, and that amount of time it takes to make something that sounds good in the game.
Well, that, and then sometimes I think audio is also overlooked.
Yeah.
I know I certainly don't always look at audio when I'm making one. I'm like, yeah, it's functional, it looks good. That's usually good enough for me. I'll find I'll find a vanilla game sound or something. I'll throw it in there.
Pew pew. That's all
Exactly. Yeah.
A guy saying that into a mic.
But if I had access to somebody who knew how to make sounds, or like, you know what, this is the kind of sound that I would like to have, and you know that's actually useful as well. Because like you said, it's hard to find some sound people that can do sound work.
Sound engineering can make the difference in the game.
Yeah.
As a player, like Subnautica, for instance, is terrifying because of the sound engineering.
Yeah. There was
terrifying.
About a week ago, I was playing Space Engineers, and I was playing the Escape from Mars scenario, and I was in my rover going around, and I had the music off, and I was just listening to all the noises, and I was like, they did a really good job. And that update was, I think, 3 weeks ago for the new sounds.
That's how you tell you're a true gamer, is when you're just listening to the sounds and then you die because you were listening to the sounds.
But
some of that leaf is really pretty. Bang. You know?
Yeah, sometimes you just need, and I do this now when I'm playing other games, is I'll look at something, like I do 3D modeling, so I'll look at how other people are doing 3D modeling. Doom, for example, the new one, that is a beautiful game. But it is 60 gigabytes or thereabout because of textures.
Yeah.
And that's 3D modeling, or part of it. And then you're looking at that for examples.
Yeah.
And finding good examples for audio is hard, but there are online repositories, but having somebody that actually edits audio.
And can produce it.
Yeah. Because you can pull stuff from videos. Like, he works on the Stargate mod, but it's really hard to find a good clip of the Stargate without other stuff going on.
Yeah, hard to find a clean clip or something. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
so
I noticed
audio editing.
Whenever I've talked to people in the gaming industry, like CEO and below, I always ask them, like, how did you get into the industry, right? And most of them say, I was a game tester. And that's like where almost everybody from that level down has started. But modding is unique in that aspect where you just build a portfolio and they hire you based on your work. So put out good work, and the work will come to you. Right. That's kind of your example, right? That's
the biggest thing. Anything art-based, whether you're doing carpentry, whether you're doing 3D modeling, whether you're doing pictures, anything. If it's art, you want a portfolio. You can have a master's degree in programming, but your programming sucks. They'll hire you, they'll be like, hey, how'd you do? And then they'll start getting you into the programs and everything, and all of a sudden they're like, you're not good at it. And then they fire you, and then you find out
that's a horrible conversation.
Just saying. Yeah, programming is a little harder to show your skill.
Right.
When you're making a model or textures, you've got something you can look at. But programming, it's more abstract, so it's a lot harder to convey what it is you know and how and your level of expertise.
And that's where apps come in. You can program some pretty simple apps, and that's portfolio. If you make one that's successful, that's even better. Like if you made the next Flappy Bird, awesome.
Would you say it's harder to program by yourself, or would you say collaborating as a group on a mod? For instance, like you have a mod you're working on, it's your baby. Would it always benefit you to bring somebody in on that project?
Yes.
Almost always, like 99% of the time?
Yes, definitely.
Like I do 3D modeling, and these guys do programming. I can't do some of the things I want to do because I don't know programming.
Right.
But if I want it done well, I'll go by one of them instead of trying to hack something together because they know how to do it. And it just makes sense because you're able to focus on what you want instead of all the other things. Just finding people to collab with, though, can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
I said that I wasn't going to be asking all the questions, by the way, guys. I know I forgot about your question, so we'll get to you in a second.
I was going to say, about your question, I've been working on a mod with for like an air bubble kind of, and I've been working with it with you and with somebody else called Geneticus, and he's not as experienced with coding, but he wanted to learn it. So he was like, you know what, let me take the code. I want to try doing a few things in it. So I'm like, you know what, take it, because that relieves the pressure off of me having to produce everything.
Right.
And that's, you know, another benefit of bringing more people on is like, you know, that you can divide the work, so that reduces the pressure on you to get, you know, everything done.
And then your turnaround time is faster.
Yeah.
So what it might have taken you 3 months to do by yourself, you could probably get out in a week.
Yeah. So what would you say the average turnaround is from like just a, well, I know I was going to get your question. I'm sorry. Let's get to your question first. So you had a question, sir.
Yeah. So, like, I own a business. I know Mike personally.
Yes.
Ask me about audio for future reference.
Ask him about audio, guys.
So, for a good 15 years now, like Fortune 500, Forbes have all been saying that as a nation, we're converting more to like a freelance contractor type setting. And I know like a lot of what you guys have talked about is doing modding as like a stepping stone towards getting a job. But like Mike, I know you can't go to a job.
Yeah.
So
I can't work.
I think it would be really helpful for a lot of people probably for you to talk about how modding can be its own job and how you make money doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge thing for a lot of people starting at like age 12 years.
For people that want to hustle and don't want to have the 9 to 5.
Yeah. So I know Mike's story.
Yeah,
But
I
I think
can't
other
actually work a job normally because I have Crohn's disease. Yay, sucks. Don't get it. So
Don't plan on it.
yeah. So essentially, I can't work a normal job, so I can't, you know, go and do things. So I have to focus a lot of my time on modding, and I'll sit there and I'll work with people on a problem all day until that problem's resolved, or it'll take a week for them to get to where they need, and I'll produce tutorial videos. I'm trying to get into live streaming because I think that's where my market is more, because I'll be able to help people in real time. YouTube's okay, but with all the stuff they got going on, it's not a good platform to release some stuff. It might be good for like a tutorial video, but I think the biggest part is interacting with your community. A lot of the people that I talk to, and most of the time when I get a donation, it's from somebody that I'm working with. They're like, hey, I have this issue, can you fix it? And I'll go, okay, sure, and I'll fix it for them. Another aspect is I'll take commissions. Somebody's like, hey, I want this made, can you make it? How much do you charge? I'm like, hey, I gotta charge you a little bit because it takes a lot of time to make this thing. Like, an hour worth of work is a lot of work.
It seems like it's easy because it comes
Yeah.
out. You produce it fast, but
Yeah.
a lot of trial and error came into making that,
Yeah,
right?
a lot of the people I talk to that are getting into the 3D modeling, they're like, how are you so fast at that?
Well,
It's like,
I messed
I've
up a
been doing
lot,
it for a
right?
while.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that because I've actually gotten requests for coding work.
Yeah.
And that's not something I do, but I know that there's a demand for that.
Yeah.
And so if you are a coder and you can't model, you can't do whatever, but you can commission, but you know, people will want to commission paid programming work.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something that you could do.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I mean, I've gotten one donation on my mods ever. But from my perspective, what Shaostoul does, his main success is recognition. So he's made this name for himself in our community with his tutorials and his models and all this stuff. So anytime anybody thinks, oh, I have a question about 3D modeling or I need a model done, they immediately think, oh, I'll just go to Shaostoul and see if he's available.
I certainly do.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of aspects that come into it. You're not going to get donations right away.
No.
It took me a year before I started getting them, and then it's been very small. All of 2017, I was barely able to do anything. I was bedridden from January to June. Not fun. So I lost a lot of my subscribers there, and so you get the commissions. As long as you're able to do those, I suggest doing them because it shows you can work on some sort of time frame to get something turned around.
Right.
Patreon's a great way. Most of my patrons are people that have been donating to me for the last 3 years.
Right.
So,
And that's
Oh yeah, the other.
Patreon is a good way to ensure that you will continue to support the work you've already put out.
yeah.
Because you know something that some players don't always get is that modding is also like game development where you have to keep fixing bugs, you have to keep updating it, and so it's a constant iterative process, and it takes time to do that, and so it makes sense, for people who want to ensure that their favorite mod is going to get updated. They're going to want to subscribe to them on Patreon or donate or something to ensure I like what you're doing. I want to see more. I want updates to my favorite mod.
Yeah. That's the other thing is I work on a project called Torch, and we have a Patreon, and it does pretty well. And the reason it gets all these donations is because there's a great need in the community for what Torch does, which is it goes back to it hacks the game server to make things run better. But it's something that a lot of people need, a lot of people really want to use, so they like to support our development by donating to the Patreon.
It's in essence the server extender mod. It's a replacement for that, right?
Yeah.
It's
you kind of made that all in one.
Yeah.
It's an alternative server for the game.
Yeah, because I know like the server owner in my house, he loves Torch. He switched over to Torch almost immediately. And for anybody who is looking at starting a server in Space Engineers, Torch is amazing.
Yeah.
A must-have. It's much simpler to use.
And it's got, it not just extends the UI of the original DS, but it also adds plugins like concealment for improving performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's got anti-grief stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A plugin for to protect, have protected areas for for players, so that new players come in, they're not going to grief you, or you can safe zones where you can interact without worry about getting shot.
Whatever the max range of their missiles are, that's where my protection is. Like,
right.
You don't want like a 1 kilometer protection. It's just,
So yeah, in that same aspect, they're working on something that has a very strong need, and that's because they've dealt with the community so long and they've watched what the community needed. And that's where me talking about watching the community for a QA person comes into play, because you need to do your research. You can release whatever you want, but don't expect to get donations for it. Watch the community, figure out what people are wanting. If nobody's done something before, figure out why, and figure out if you can do it. Like on Fallout 4, I made the structure pieces because nobody had done anything yet. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this, and then I did it. It took me a while, but I did it.
Yeah, key is to see what the community wants and how you can provide that.
yeah. So does anybody else have any questions they wanted to ask these guys? Do you have a question?
Yeah. Is there any places like other than YouTube to learn codes like Lua?
There's actually a lot of online sites. Code Academy is one of them. I have a whole bunch of links that I don't have on me, but there's a lot of free online sources. And if you feel like paying a little bit of a subscription, you can actually go to paid online schools that will have like online tutors that you can actually talk to. So if you're not wanting to do game modding and you're wanting to do something completely different, you can pay and have that tutor there.
Yeah. The way I like to learn programming, this is how I learned C#. You find a thing that you really want to do, and then you have this big idea, and you break it up into smaller pieces. And you take each small piece and go, okay, how do I do this? Then you go to the documentation for that language and see, yeah, okay, this is how you make a list of things, this is how you move this data over here, and just find all these small pieces, and eventually you'll be able to put them together and understand how the language works.
And there's always the Discord channel as well.
Yeah.
Like these guys' brains. That's the best thing to do.
Learn by example. Find something small to do, and then work on that.
Yeah.
If you can, find online sources that are working that you can pull information from and learn from that. Like when I do my 3D modeling, people are like, I don't know how to do this. I'll send them an example file that has everything already done, so they can figure out, oh, that's where that goes, or that's how this looks. And it just makes it easier, because you find out the little aspects here and there that you need to do or that you missed in an example.
And there's something that's not necessarily applicable to Lua, but it's applicable to any programming. There's some, if you kind of have a sense of how to write something, but you're struggling on a particular problem, Stack Overflow, their website is really good, because more than likely, if you have a question, somebody else has already had the question and has gotten an answer. And Stack Overflow is a great resource to learn or to find the solutions to the problems you have.
Yeah, there's places in the Space Engineers code where you can see somebody's just copied a piece of code, and there's a comment that says, from Stack Overflow article. And yeah, Stack Overflow.
I've done that.
For Lua specifically, I would personally suggest Minecraft. There's a mod called computer craft or something like that that allows you to use Lua in the game. So that's a way that you could automatically interact with it and figure out how it works here and there, at least in that environment. But the important part is actually learning some of it to start. So that's a good way to do it.
Can you guys, anybody else have a question? You have a question right here.
Yeah, so one of my biggest influences, my main go growing up was like narrative heavy games. And then that got me interested in narrative design. And so like, I even like, when I got out of college through an application of BioWare for narrative design. And then recently, that was about 10 years ago, I recently got into programming. And I've started going back to school for computer science. And I really, really enjoy it. But one of the things was like, whether I might have a better opportunity making a name for myself or getting experience with picking like an older frame like Neverwinter Nights 2 is kind of what or Divinity, or would it be better to start looking into like adding campaigns or scenarios to a game like Space Engineers? Or
it would pretty much be along the same lines. If you do it for an older game, it might be a little bit harder to get your name out there.
Yeah, because they have less of an audience for an older
But
game.
if you look at a bigger game that has a bigger following and you create a narrative for it, you're more likely to get something out of that.
yeah.
Skyrim is super popular, and you can make a full-length campaign in that.
Yeah.
You could start by just making small quest chains and linking them together.
Even Space Engineers has the visual scripting tool now, which is something that the devs added to allow you to write campaigns and interactive scenarios in a non-coding way.
Yeah.
There are coding interactions with it. You can, if you go through the modding API, you can still interact with it through code if you want to. Yeah. I think Escape from Mars, it was at least partly written in code, not using their tool. So, you know, that's another option as well. And that's, so I'm sure other games have a very similar tool.
I personally suggest looking for something that's new.
Yeah.
While something old might be fantastic and work really great,
And you'll love it, probably.
I know Neverwinter Nights has some amazing tools, and you're able to make some really quality stuff.
Yeah. But you're reaching Divinity.
They agree with you out there.
But if you look at something newer, Divinity's newer, and that would be along the same lines of Neverwinter Nights.
Wouldn't it come down to also like what's needed, right? Like if somebody's been crying out for a mod for a game for years that just nobody's decided to put the work in on. I can think of an example of Star Wars: The Old Republic, where they're this Old Republic 2, where they had unfinished content in the game that they had to release, so the modders went in and fixed it.
Yeah.
That'd be an example of an old game where everybody'd be like, "Thank you," you know, and they'd remember your name.
I'll tell you that the Space Engineers community is crying for story-based content.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like when Keen added their campaign, it was great, and I'm like, I want more. Give me more. I don't care if it's DLC. I want more.
Yeah. I mean, you could take an older game that hasn't been out for 20 years, and if you add a decent mod to it, a good narrative, and you're good at that stuff, and you have an idea, just do it.
I know BioWare actually required a Neverwinter Nights module on their narrative design application for a long time.
Oh,
So
really?
One of the things
that's an example of what you would need.
that's actually why I got back into Neverwinter Nights 2. But now that I've really been engaging more programming, that's where it's like, oh, there's a community that could actually like help me out, make connections, build networking, and just play games.
It comes down to that. Yeah, it comes down to
so
some
a lot of
networking,
networking.
getting.
The really good part about you learning programming along with it is a lot of narrative. You really want to have some programming to make it all work together.
And I love the Living World AI, the sort of higher level scripting where, you know, it responds to player triggers and, you know, what's in your inventory, how have you been playing the game. RimWorld, for example, is super like detailed with the storyteller stuff.
Even if you can find an older game like Freelancer, which I'm pretty sure is still alive because of mods, if you can find some way to add a narrative to that people could play afterwards, you'd probably have a lot of good times there.
Make the freelancer the Star Citizen was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Actually get
short time
released.
left, guys. There's a little bit of time left. Does anybody else have a question they want to toss up? Anything? Nobody?
Yep.
You do.
Yep. So you've been talking about situations where the community has been really positive. Has there ever been a situation where you've been in a community where, you know, a game maker is more like proprietary content, like I don't want you doing anything like this, I want you to stop doing this, this is your cease and desist. Have you ever encountered that?
Yes. The latest one that I can actually think of that's huge scale is there's this group that's working on a Skyrim multiplayer mod. So actually making it multiplayer. They were going to release it on the Steam Workshop, but Bethesda said no. But they were going to use all the tools on Steam to make it work. So that really set them back, and now they're having to make their own API, their own lobby, all this other stuff, just so they can actually release it.
I don't think anybody here would be opposed to a Skyrim multiplayer.
Yeah, no. I've been watching it closely because I'm like, I want that.
Nobody's against that, I don't think.
But most of the time, you don't have too many issues. Most of the games that have like creation kits or modding tools out, you're not going to have an issue with. If you have a mod out that has copyright content, that's where you'll most likely run into your issues. If you're getting donations.
And if you're redistributing, game files that
Yeah.
aren't in the agreement for you to use when you're using the tools, that's a problem.
Like if you were to pull Star Trek stuff or Star Wars stuff and put it in Space Engineers and you were to get a bunch of donations and it was to get really popular, you'd probably see a cease and desist.
Yeah.
But most of the time, modding isn't big enough to get that recognition.
Yeah.
That multiplayer tool, very big to get recognition because it would be changing, especially because they have Elder Scrolls Online now. I almost guarantee that game is going to tank when Skyrim multiplayer comes out.
Right, that's probably exactly why Bethesda's
Yeah.
like no, because it's gonna cut into their market, and so that's an important thing another important thing to target, like especially with like other IP, like like you said, Star Trek and Star Wars. If what you're putting out is potentially going to conflict with,
Infringe.
not necessarily infringe, but even conflict with revenue that company potentially would get, then that would be a problem.
Right.
IP licensing is certainly a big problem, and especially with some of the big stuff like Star Wars or whatever.
One of the worst companies that I've read about is Harmony Gold. They've been attacking the people making BattleTech and the MechWarrior games for a long time because they used models very similar to Macross, I think it was, and they've been getting in trouble since. And they've been getting in trouble for the name since. So some aspects you have to be careful, but when you start getting revenue for it, that's when you have to really be careful. If you're using programs that you acquired somehow to do your modeling, like if you're using 3ds Max and you don't actually have a license for it, that's where you need to start getting careful, because you can get in trouble for it.
So with that in mind, guys, we got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to let you guys each tell these guys how they can get a hold of you. Aside from the Discord server, which you can also give out as well, how do they get a hold of you guys? Like, how can they see you? I know you're on Twitch.
I'm on Twitch.
So let's start with Rexar. How can they get a hold of you? Besides that card right there, there's also business
I've got a
cards.
stack of business cards, yeah.
I also have some.
I'm on Twitch, it's Rexar_TC. On GitHub, Rexar-TC. Rexar on the Discord, and I've got an email address and other Twitter stuff on my business card if you really want to get in contact with me.
I wasn't prepared for that. Well, I do have a GitHub, GitHub Phoenix 84. I have some YouTube videos. Most of my YouTube videos are private because they're all bug reports. But I do have some mod videos that demonstrate mods that I have, and that's on YouTube Phoenix 84118.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm on Discord. That's about it.
So I have my business cards here. I'm on Discord all the time. I'm on my YouTube channel answering people whenever they have questions. I'm trying to get on Twitch. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty much anywhere I can think of being. Just look for the Shaostoul name. If you Google that, you'll find me. Because before I had that name, it didn't come up on Google.
And if you need any help on the Twitch side, contact me. I'm on the Discord.
Gotta figure out the bandwidth first.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. That's an internet problem. You'll find me at defortification.com with a 4. It's right here. All right. Just look for the red dice. The name is everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all that. So you can find me there. Also, my particular Twitch channel is D4_Cater. So if you guys want to check me out there, give me a follow. You guys can keep up on it. I'm probably going to start following Shaostoul, so that way he's following. I think I'm already following you. And so, yeah, so you guys, if you guys want to get a hold of me, see any YouTube content, we do a ton of stuff. Live talk shows, live Dungeons & Dragons game every Friday and Sunday night, which a couple players out here are in it. It's pretty much all, but yeah, other than that, guys, I think we are good to go. So I want to thank all you guys for coming. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be the host. I want to thank all you guys for coming and checking us out. And you guys have a great night the rest of the show. We'll be here. Yeah, we'll continue for comments. You guys can stop by. Thanks, guys.